tremendous amount of courage to lead. What's more, we talk about integrity. I think integrity takes courage. To speak truth to power, to do the right thing in the face of overwhelming pressure to do the opposite. All of these things take courage, which I think begs the question, then where does courage come from? I don't believe that courage is an internal fortitude where you dig down deep and find the courage. I think courage is external. It's like, a world-famous trapeze artist has the courage to try a brand new death-defying act for the first time with a net. He wouldn't try it without the net. It's the net that gave him the courage. And I think so too is it for human beings, that the quality of our relationships give us courage. You talk to folks in uniform who do heroic things. They'll never say it was for God or country. It was for the person to the left or the person to the right. It was the quality of the relationships. And so for us to build courage, what we have to do is invest in relationships. Because when you're facing a very difficult situation, an ethical challenge, a work challenge, whatever it is, all we need is one person in our lives who says, I've got your back. I believe in you. You have to do this. It's the right thing to do. And if everything goes sideways, don't worry, I'll be there with you. I mean, even just talking about it, you feel like you have renewed energy. And so if you have one person in your life who can provide that for you, at work or at home, you'll be amazed the amount of courage you have to do the right thing and to lead.
Oh, I love hearing all of that. And yes, you can kind of feel it as you just listen to you say it. Pfizer has 4 core values, and one of them happens to be courage. And so it's a great encouragement for our core value and courage. Another question coming in from David Rodriguez, and that is, what steps do you take to make yourself better?
So I love the idea of learning. And so first of all, to make yourself better, you have to recognize that you're not an expert in anything. I'm an expert in nothing. I'm a student in the things that I do. And I may be a more advanced student than some people, but there's always more to learn. So number one is I never think of any ceiling. I always think of the opportunity for constant learning. And 2, I like being the idiot in the room. Like, I like spending time with people who are smarter than me and don't feel the need to compete against them or prove that I know as much or more than they do. In fact, I'm very open about it. And it kind of goes when we talked about our feelings, when you sort of say, I'm sad, I'm angry, the ability to put that out there, the ability to put out in the room, you guys know more than I do, or I'm the idiot here. It actually provides relief to you. Forget about that. It provides relief to you that you can be the idiot in the room and you can soak in new information. So it's one of my favorite things to say to people, which is, you know more about this than I do, because it's a relief for me. It lets me off the hook that I've got nothing to prove. So it's a lot of it is mindset, the mindset of learning.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, thank you. So, Simon, a question from Carlos Flores. Who is your inspirational mentor?
So I have a couple.
Okay.
There's a guy by the name of Bob Chapman, who I wrote about in my book, Leaders Eat Last. I met Bob and I visited his factories and was profoundly moved by what he's building at his company, Barry Way Miller. And just by dumb luck, I've become friends with Bob and he's become an incredible mentor for me. An incredible mentor for me. And the other one is a guy by the name of Ron Bruder, who has believed in me since the beginning. And this is what I've learned about mentors. A lot of companies have mentor programs, which I think is funny. I don't think you can assign someone to be a mentor. I think for me, a definition of a mentor is someone who always has time for you. And so these people who are way more accomplished than I am, or I was at the time especially, I would call them up and they had time for me. I don't know. They saw something in me. Maybe they saw themselves in me. I don't know. And not everybody has time for us. Those people won't be your mentors. And a great mentor relationship, both parties are actually learning, because mentors you'll find learn from the experience as well. So it's not like this wise old person sitting on high dispensing advice, but rather they come with a sense of curiosity as well, which is why they always have time for you.
Oh, that's wonderful and special and a great reminder when it kind of goes both ways in a mentorship capacity. So thank you.
Yeah.
A question in from Michael Martin. What do you do to refresh yourself?
It's not that different than other people. Taking breaks.
Okay.
I believe, there's this great story of 2 lumberjacks, and every morning they start chopping wood at the same time. and every day they stop chopping wood at the same time. And every day, one of the lumberjacks disappears for about an hour in the middle of the day, and every day he chops more wood than the other lumberjack. This goes on for months. Then finally, the one who works all day stops and says, I have to ask you, every day we start at the same time. Every day we stop at the same time. Every day you disappear for an hour in the middle of the day. Every day I work more hours than you, and every day you chop more wood than me. Where do you go for that hour? And the other lumberjack looks up and says, I go home and sharpen my axe. And so I'm a great believer in taking breaks. I'm a great believer in turning off. And most of us don't know how to take vacation. We telecommute from a beach. That's not taking a vacation. That's bringing work with you to your family's vacation. So I'm a great believer that when you have a weekend or a week off, turn off. Obviously, there's work to do sometimes, and sometimes it's imperfect. That's okay. But where we literally have never taken a vacation, I think that's unhealthy. So even if it's just a day off, taking Friday off, I think that's a good thing.
A critical piece.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And is there any way that you're able to disconnect? Do you leave the phone behind? What are your kind of tips when you're on vacation to truly check out?
I don't take my computer with me.
Okay.
And I don't like answering emails on the phone. I find it annoying. So I don't take a computer with me, so I don't even have the temptation. And I tell everybody, if there's an emergency while I'm gone, figure it out. And what you find is that it's incredibly empowering for a leader to say to their team, "You got this." There are very, very, very few problems that will come up that require me and only me to input. And it's very empowering for a team to know that they're responsible while the boss is away.
Absolutely. Freeing for you and empowering for them. Exactly. So a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Yes, I love it. All right.
It goes back to courage, right?
You gotta have the courage.
Have the courage to like, all right, okay, I'm not gonna be involved in this. Yeah.
Both ways.
Both ways, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Simon. So from Kristen Davis, what books or podcasts do you utilize to help grow you as a person and as a leader?
So I've been pretty open about this. I actually struggle to read. I have ADHD, and so paying attention to books has actually been very difficult. Everybody thinks I'm like this big reader that reads hundreds of books a year. I don't. I've written more books than I've read. But I do like learning, and so the way I learn is from listening. So conversations with people who are smarter than me, being that student, always having a student mindset, insatiably curious about what makes other people tick. So insatiable curiosity in conversations, but I like documentaries as well. And so two documentaries that I would recommend, which are fantastic for sort of leadership education. One of them is Senna, Senna, which is about race car driver Ayrton Senna. Even if you're not into Formula One racing, it's still a brilliant documentary, and it's still very enjoyable. But basically, it highlights these two archetypes: Senna, who drives for passion, and Alain Prost, who drives for the numbers. And if you compare that to our modern day, who's driven by the end of year goal, the quarterly goal at any cost, versus who's the person who does it for the love. And you start to see how Senna commands tremendous love and loyalty from the other drivers who are competing against him, but they support him, where nobody likes Prost. And you start to see these two archetypes, and it asks the simple question: who do you want to be? Mm-hmm. What kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to live one of passion or one obsessed with numbers? And it puts it out there. The other one is Kumare, Kumare. It wasn't supposed to be a leadership documentary, but it ends up being a great leadership documentary of a documentarian who sets out to sort of mock the sort of guru culture. I won't give anything away, no spoilers here, but let's just say something goes wrong.
Okay.
And it's actually quite interesting.
Fascinating. And in the race car, when you talked about kind of the passion and then versus the numbers, do you see your kind of concept of stress versus passion play out in that as well, and those kind of principles as well?
Without a doubt. I mean, the joy that comes from doing something for the love of it, and ultimately, Senna's still a high-performing race car driver. He still wins a lot of races.
Sure.
When you do something with joy, you are a high performer. And when you're only doing it for the number, you're only doing it for the result, there's some unethical behaviors that start to creep in. This is what Prost was accused of, which is running other drivers off the road because he needed the points. And so you start to sort of look at our own work, the people who are only obsessed with numbers, it creates some unethical fuzziness sometimes. And so I think when you do something for joy, it's amazing how we become better performers, but also better performers, like more honest performers.
Oh, that's great. Absolutely. All right, Simon. Angela Gaffey asks a question around, would you rather ask for permission or just ask for forgiveness afterwards?
I mean, that's an easy one.
No brainer.
Yeah, I've said sorry a lot. I've recognized and learned that if I ask to do something that's new or unconventional, I'll get a lot of resistance, not because they don't agree, it's because they're afraid of the result. And if I'm willing to take all the accountability, I'll give you one silly example. I published a book called Together is Better, which looks like a children's book, but it's for adults. And I did some very new and different things in that book that the publisher was very reticent to do. But I sort of went forwards anyway. And it ended up being this magical little book that no one ever thought it would be. And because they all ignored it, the funny thing is it debuted on the New York Times bestseller list and nobody knew because no one was paying any attention to the silly little book. But yeah, I don't mind helping clean up the mess that I make, but I definitely want to drive forwards and try new things. I love experimenting. And I also know, I think people who like to experiment, you have to recognize that things don't always go well. And when you experiment, you have to take accountability. And when you experiment, things do fail. That's the whole point of experimentation. Because if you want everything to go right, that's when you play it safe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm totally fine asking for forgiveness.
That's great. And a New York Times bestseller, Simon, does not sound like a silly little book.
Oh, it is a magical little.
That's wonderful.
I'm very proud of that book, and I wrote it specifically to be given away. The opening on the first page, it says to, from, So it's literally a book that you give to people you want to inspire or to thank people for inspiring you.
Oh, how special. That's a gift. Absolutely.
Literally.
It is. All right, Simon. So Nicole DeCourcy asks, what was the last straw that made you think to yourself, I have to make a change and figure out my why and get out of my current situation?
So, I went back to that experience I had many years ago where it was darkness that made me realize I had to make a change. And I think that's very common for people who are in dark spaces. You realize I'm at a fork in the road. I either have to affect change or I don't know how this plays out, but it's not good. And I think a lot of people have faced that fork. And again, I was very lucky I had a friend there to hold space for me, which gave me courage. Goes back again to friendship. But if we sort of take it to something more recent, for example, I didn't write anything during COVID, and everybody's like, "Oh, did you use the time during COVID to write a book?" And the answer was, "No, I can't write that way. I need human interaction." And so it was a creative, cemetery for me. There was no big ideas, nothing worth writing about anyway. I don't believe in writer's block. I believe that you're in the wrong environment for creativity to happen. And so I think a lot of people, when they run out of ideas or they get stuck, they blame themselves. I don't. I blame my environment. And so that's easy to change because I can't change me, but I can change my environment. And so, for example, this year I wasn't having any ideas and I tried different things and it wasn't working. And so I took a risk and I moved to another country for 11 weeks. I moved to the UK for 11 weeks for no other reason than to shake things up and see what happens. And the ideas bubbled. It's absolutely wonderful. So I'm a great believer in changing your routine, doing something different, putting your desk in a different way. Start inviting a friend over. I've done this one as well. A friend who is in a completely different line of business, who has nothing to do with what I do. Because, so many of us are working from home by ourselves. Find another friend who works from home by themselves, who might be in a completely different company. Work together. Simply sit in a room together. It's amazing what happens, the ideas that flow, and just having a work buddy. Things like that. Experiment with entirely new, different ways of working. Not all of them will work, and you find the one that works for you. And when that stops working, you try something new again.
Absolutely. I love that piece. And it sounds like it can be a small change, a small tweak to a big change to move to the UK.
To move to the UK for a few weeks, yeah.
Absolutely. This is from Amy Hajaku, and that is, what's your greatest fear?
I guess it sounds silly, but I think my greatest fear is that my luck will run out. I'm happy-go-lucky, and People say you make your own luck. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I mean,